Hi, thanks so much for coming. I'm Michelle Malkin. I'm the host of Michelle Malkin Investigates. And on behalf of CRTV and my Michelle Malkin Investigates crew, I'd really like to thank you for coming out. We'd also like to extend our deepest appreciation to the Manhattan Film Festival, Philip Nelson, his wonderful mother Lucy, and everyone here at the theater for this special screening of Railroaded: Surviving Wrongful Convictions. We're going to have a panel afterwards of lawyers and scientists and exonerees. We also have many special members in the audience who are very committed to and active in the movement to free wrongfully convicted people and to make sure that wrongfully accused people do not have to travel the same hellish road and back. One thing I want to make really clear is that this has been an incredible journey for me personally as a journalist, an investigative journalist, an op-ed journalist who's been in the business for 25 years. I don't think that I have done any more important and meaningful work than I have in this area. And one reason why is because of the common ground that has been forged in my professional career and personally among this incredible constellation of people who are committed left, right, and center to righting wrongs and preventing wrongs. There's so much that goes into this perfect, horrific storm that leads to wrongful convictions, and I hope that you'll be informed and enlightened and inspired to act. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy. Although enjoy isn't the right word for it, but I hope you were informed and enlightened. Thank you. And John, you want to come on too? So one of the most important things I've discovered and learned over the last 2 years is that it takes a village to right a wrongful conviction, just like it takes a village to win a wrongful conviction. And we've got an incredible panel here of people with an amazing amount of experience, diverse experience. Turn it off. This one? Yeah, I think that's right. And I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves. Ray Spencer is in California, and after winning the $9 million jury settlement, a judge in Clark County tried to kill it, and he had to go to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, where the jury settlement was upheld and then sent back to Clark County to be negotiated down to a fraction of what the jury had determined he deserved to win. And he continues to speak out. His wonderful wife, who supported him through his fight, is in ill health. And so for those of you who do pray, I hope that you can pray for his wife and his family as they're going through that. Brian Franklin in Texas is currently trying to obtain something called a certificate of actual innocence, because as you saw even in the film, even though he was acquitted within hours and had jury members hug him, as well as the judge proclaim his actual innocence and clip the electronic anklet off of him, he cannot do what he wishes to do, which is to go back into law enforcement until he obtains this certificate of actual innocence from the Parole and Pardon Board in Texas. So he is pursuing that. And with that, I'm going to give everybody's name and then have them give a couple of minutes of statement and remarks, and then open it up for questions. This is Erica Fuchs, who, as you saw, is a DNA biologist from Iowa State. Jeffrey Deskovic, an exoneree who is now working to help others still behind bars. Craig Cooley, a veteran of the New York Innocence Project, post-conviction lawyer. Jenny Holtzclaw, the sister of Daniel Holtzclaw. Oscar Michelin, a new friend, and I feel like I can call all of you on the panel that, and a successful exoneration lawyer, one of the many hats that he wears here in New York City, and retired NYPD detective and forensic and DNA expert, John Palucci. Take it away.
My name again is Erica Fuchs, and I'm the Iowa biologist.
That one's not on.
Yes, not on. We'll try this again. I'm the Iowa biologist who just happened to stumble upon Daniel's case. I want to explain why it was important to note that the forensic analyst from Oklahoma erred when she said Daniel's DNA was not on the fly of his uniform pants. Why did it matter to observe there was a Y chromosome? The prosecution claimed that if Daniel had simply gotten DNA matching a female accuser on his hands and had transferred that with his fingers to the fly of his pants, the prosecution claimed that if that was the explanation, you should find Daniel's DNA on the fly of his pants from his fingers. So the whole argument of the prosecution saying there was likely to be vaginal fluid was based on their conclusion, which was wrong, that you could say Daniel had left no DNA of his own, skin cell DNA, on the fly of the pants. So when I noticed there was a Y chromosome, that showed there was male DNA, and it's actually inconclusive whether that came from Daniel or someone else. But it was important to realize that the prosecution used this DNA matching the female accuser to argue that there was actually vaginal fluid there. The prosecutor said in his closing argument that it was a fact that the DNA from the female accuser, a teenager, had transferred in her vaginal fluid, and that's completely false. Daniel was accused of orally sodomizing people and raping them through the unzipped fly of his buckled pants, and that actually was not supported by the evidence, because when the uniform pants and belt were confiscated, there were no signs of vaginal fluid, no stains or deposits on them. So again, the reason it was important to say that there is actually male DNA is, number one, men don't make vaginal fluid, so the fact there was skin cell DNA from males, one or more there, shows there's a reasonable non-vaginal method for DNA to end up on the fly of the pants, and so that would likely be possible for the female's DNA. And the second reason the male DNA was important is that the prosecution was claiming only if there were no DNA from Daniel, that would mean the female DNA must have transferred through vaginal fluid rather than his hands. I want to point out, so you all know, that skin cell DNA can transfer very readily. If I shook one of your hands and then touched my dress, for example, on the crotch area, I could actually transfer DNA from you without my own DNA transferring to the cloth. So that's important to keep in mind in Daniel's case, that many people did not realize before his case how easily skin cell DNA can transfer. And one thing I hope that comes out of Daniel's case is in the future, especially when he's freed and in the process of freeing him, other people who may be convicted based on simple skin cell DNA transfer will not have that happen because of greater awareness due to Daniel's case. Thank you all for being here.
My name's Jeff Deskovic, and I'm the founder of the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice, which exonerates wrongfully convicted people. Obviously, I started it as a result of my own wrongful imprisonment. So we've exonerated 2 people, and we got another 5 out through other legal means in the course of our 5.5 years. And I'm finishing up my 2nd year of law school, where So a couple of quick points just about the case that we watched. In terms of doing prep work, just to be an advocate, and even before I had the foundation and even forward, and studying wrongful convictions, and my master's thesis is written on wrongful conviction causes and in the reforms. A couple of red flags that are present in this case is certainly the pretrial prejudicial publicity. That's evident here. And just secondly, there have been a few exonerations in which people were, the evidence used to wrongfully convict them initially was DNA before further testing, straightened it out later. DNA is often correctly called the gold standard of evidence, but of course that assumes that all the correct protocols are observed, no contaminations happen, and that there is truthful testimony and reports by the experts. And to me, that part of the case is extremely troubling. And last remark I'll make is, these secret hearings and evidence and witnesses, what country are we in? I've never heard of anything like that. That just makes no sense to me at all whatsoever. And, Michelle, you mentioned that we had some special people in the audience. Okay, so the first person I want to recognize is another exoneree who has been home a little bit more than a year. He did 20 years before he was exonerated. The same polygraphist who played a significant role in my wrongful conviction also framed him. So Anthony DeBippo is here with us. You want to stand up for a second, Anthony? Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry, the microphone's so loud. So we have on these rings, which are oversized, okay, and they're made by another exoneree, Kirk Bloodsworth, who was the first person to be exonerated from death row, his case being in Maryland. And so Kirk is able to make jewelry, and so using funds that he's gotten from third parties, he's made these exoneree rings, which have been sent out to and are continuing to be made even as we speak. And actually one of those funders is the second such person that I want to recognize that's here with us, who's one of the founding board members of the Innocence Project, very, very successful, the owner actually of Lava Records, who also, as if he's not doing enough, right? One of the few people who has a busier schedule than I do, and I'm busy. He also has a podcast, Wrongful Conviction, and I want to recognize Jason Flom is with us here tonight. Putting his time and his money and his effort, where his passion is. And to me, the depth of somebody's commitment, it's one thing to give the verbiage, okay, that's necessary, but at the same time, I mean, what your actions are and, where your money is, that's really where it's at. And I remember one night, Jason, and I'll pass the mic, I remember I was at one of the gala dinners for the Innocence Project's annual event, and not only were you exhorting people to write checks, right, which they did, but you also personally wrote $1 million check that night yourself, and to me that was just the ultimate. So I just want to again just recognize you, and in a way I'm here because of you, because you supported the Innocence Project, which is the entity that exonerated me. So again, hats off to you, Jason, and thanks for coming tonight.
Appreciate everyone coming tonight. My name is Craig Cooley. I am a former staff attorney from the Innocence Project. I remember when Jeffrey got out about 10 years ago, and I want to congratulate Jeffrey on getting into law school. I know we tried to get you in the Hofstra, but you kept on going. You didn't give up, and now you're in law school, so that's great. I was with the project for 5 years. Before that, I did death penalty cases in Nevada, and but my whole career has been post-conviction. So working at the project, I've been able to exonerate about 15 people, and I shouldn't say the people I work with. I mean, at the project, you have paralegals, you have law students, you have Peter and Barry, of course. You have the intake team that goes through thousands and thousands and thousands of letters. They went through Jeff's. I mean, everybody who's exonerated at any of these projects across the country, there's people who read that first letter like, please help me. And so it ultimately ends up on my desk, and it is what Michelle said at the beginning. It takes a team of people to get people out of prison, and I got involved in Daniel's case honestly because I joined Twitter. I mean, I say that sounds funny, but I joined Twitter. I was on Facebook for a long time. Facebook's like an echo chamber of like-minded people. I'm liberal. I'm not afraid to admit it. But when I joined Twitter, I was like, I want to listen to everybody. I want to be educated. So I followed a number of conservative pundits, including the wonderful Michelle Malkin. And I saw her tweeting about Daniel's case. And some background, when I was at the project, the staff attorneys divvy up the states. There were 6 staff attorneys when I was there, and we just divvied up 50 states, and Oklahoma was my state. So I was quite familiar with the injustices or lack there, or just the lack of justice going on in Oklahoma. So I saw Michelle tweeting, I'm like, all right, I mean, there's a GOPer who, it is, I mean, you guys are law and order, and I just said, look, I think you're finally seeing what I see, so I really appreciate what you're doing for this guy. If you have any questions, it was my state. At the end of this project, I'd love to talk to you. The next day, I think we had about a 2-hour conversation, and you know, the rest is history. I was been able to look at a lot of stuff, but like Jeffrey said, a lot of red flags are in Daniel's case that you see in a lot of wrongful convictions. Right? Just the way it was interrogated, the way it was investigated. But it takes every one of these people, everyone's support here, to get people out of prison. So I really appreciate you guys coming. I really appreciate Michelle giving me the opportunity to be here. And I appreciate the whole class for letting me help Daniel. And I just look forward to continuing this journey. Hopefully it's not too long, but if it's that long, we'll make it and get busy living or get busy dying. So that's Shawshank Redemption. So. Yeah.
Thank you everyone for being here. Even when I watch it, I watched this several times and I still get emotional every time I watch it. It's obviously because I'm still in the fight, but being able to sit here with other wrongfully convicted people, Anthony and Jeffrey, and seeing you guys have your convictions overturned, it gives me so much more in me to continue fighting. And like everyone has said, it takes literally an army of village of people to get this conviction overturned. And I'm very vocal on Facebook, on Twitter. I want each and one of you guys to join me in this fight to see my brother get his conviction overturned as well. So far there's been over 10,000 people that have signed his petition, and I hope you guys join it as well. And I hope that this made an impact, and maybe even you are more acknowledgeable as far as learning that there has been over 2,000 wrongful convictions, and there's just so many more out there that are waiting for their stories to be told. So I hope that you guys continue on this fight and with us, and thank you again so much for coming out here. And if I can answer any questions later on after these other 2 people speak as well, I'll be more than happy to speak with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Oscar Michelin. I'm a private attorney here in Manhattan and Long Island, and for the last 14 years been involved in exoneration cases, and have been blessed to be able to exonerate 6 of those folks, including one of them posthumously, since I've started that work. And it's a very frustrating effort. Obviously, when it's successful, it's a joyous effort, but the vast majority of cases that we work on sometimes lead to dead ends. We get, even as a private lawyer doing this work, thanks to social media, we get, I've been saying, hundreds of letters a month, really, requesting help, each of them, more passionate and more disturbing as you read them. And we only take reinvestigation cases. Obviously, if folks think that DNA can help exonerate them, we pass it on to the Innocence Network or someone who works on DNA cases. And reinvestigation cases are very difficult for the families because nothing, can move quickly enough. One of my more significant cases that we exonerated was David McCallum, who went in at 16 for a murder that he didn't commit and did 29 years in jail until we exonerated him. But that fight took 10 years of looking at witnesses and tracking down evidence and things that the original lawyers didn't do. We found that his trial lawyer, for example, started every morning with a double glass of vodka. That's a true story. And was trying a case of a 16-year-old and was drunk, every morning. His own investigator finally told us that 20-something years later. And the point of it is that it's exposure to these things that is how exonerations work. Because the reason why we finally got David exonerated was because the new DA came into Brooklyn, a guy named Ken Thompson, who started a wrongful conviction unit that was going to really look at cases and examine them with an open mind. The vast majority of these false convictions occur because the police originally arise on a premise or a DA, and then they can never shake that premise. They never want to admit they're wrong. They never want to look at anything else. Here you have, for example, in Daniel's case that was very eye-opening, where there were no, and they went back and tried to make a pattern out of something that wasn't there. It was very, very shocking. And then, of course, closed hearings, which, shouldn't occur in the United States. But it's exposure, when we see that, and Michelle showed the chart that exonerations have been increasing every year, it's not that they're increasing for any reason other than the public, law enforcement, district attorneys are open to looking at them, okay? And for example, we also have Phil Nelson here, who's one of the founders of the Manhattan Film Festival, which has always shed a light on wrongful convictions. We've showed a movie here about David's case before he was exonerated. And that showing in that movie helped open the eyes of people to the case. So talk to your neighbors about it, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on. This is not a political issue. This is a justice issue. We all relish the Constitution. It's the basis of our country. And a wrongful conviction touches on so many different rights that we take for granted that end up getting abused. So people always can say, how can I help? Well, get involved, talk to your community about it. How about not dodging jury service? Okay, I used to embarrass people. Raise your hand if you ever try to get out of a jury service. It's like, no, serve on a jury. We need folks who are open-minded and are willing to look carefully at evidence and not just believe whatever that particular description of it is. And when folks are running for office and they ask them, will you fund defense of the indigent? Because bad lawyering is also one of the principal causes of wrongful conviction. So these are things that you can impact by making sure you support the right causes, the right people who are running for offices that can make a difference. So, and just coming here and listening to the story is the first step. Thank you.
Hi, I'm John Palucci. I'm a retired detective sergeant from New York City, right here in New York City. And I currently work as a crime scene analyst. I have one of my colleagues here, Peter Valentin. As a crime scene analyst, what do? For somebody to engage my services, I say, this is what I want from you. I want the crime scene photos, I want all the crime scene sketches and the reports, and then the master evidence lists, and go on. And the last thing I'm going to look at is statements from either side, because that's going to give me contextual bias or confirmatory bias, or it's going to somehow influence how I get to analyze everything. Now let's look at this case. How many complainants we have, and how many actual crime scene folders there are. There's like nothing. I'm looking for the ability, give me something that I can work with to put together these events that transpired and either impeach or corroborate what these people are claiming. What we have here is just a lot of words. Okay. We don't have physical evidence. We don't have crime scene photos. We don't have crime scene diagrams. We don't have all the things that I would require to give you an analysis of the events that transpired. This investigation, any investigation, a good investigation needs integrity, right? First, we'll start with the integrity of the investigators. And as you just saw, Detective Davis walked into the interview room with a preconceived notion about Daniel. How many people have seen that interview? As a detective supervisor, if those two were my detectives, they'd be standing on a footpost in the rain somewhere, and I'd come by every 10 minutes to make sure they didn't move, go inside and get a slice of pizza. Horrible, horrible work. Detective Davis is a seasoned sex crimes investigator who believes every female has the same sexual preferences that she does when she talks about no woman likes to be woken up for sex, and because you said that, I don't believe you. Just horrible. How does a seasoned sex crimes detective make a statement like that? So the integrity of the investigators is not very good. As you watch Rocky Gregory, I was going to say Dennis, that's the guy from Mask, right?
Right.
So he even says like vulgar things, right? This is what I'm talking about. Now you're arresting a police officer, or you're interviewing a police officer, maybe to arrest him, in a time when what I call the blue scare, when the media was very anti-cop and there was a lot of anti-cop sentiment out there. So you are conducting an interview that's likely going to be shown on television, and you say vulgar things in that interview. I can understand putting the subject at ease, you know, throwing a few curse words out there, the fraternal cop thing and all that, but they went way overboard with that. So the integrity of the investigators is horrible. What about the integrity of your evidence? Right, we're talking about what Erica was saying, skin cell DNA. So in order for that to have any sort of probative value, it needs to be collected very shortly after the incident, right? So we have video of Daniel rolling his pants up and sticking them in a bag that Detective Gregory also stuck his hand in, right? We don't know that night when he went home and took his uniform pants off, did he just leave them lumped up in a ball? Were they on the floor? Were they where his feet were stepping, where there's all kinds of transfers occurring? So the integrity of the evidence is no good. Let's talk about the integrity of our complainant witnesses, right, who many of them were intoxicated, drug addicts, essentially contacted and drummed up by these investigators. I would like to go back in their history, some of their previous investigations, and see how many times they dismissed the credibility of a witness based on the fact that they have an extensive arrest history, that they have documented history of drug use, that they were probably high when I spoke to them. You know, so the investigation had no integrity. So here we are, and we have an amazing family that we've developed here, and I'm just very grateful to be a part of it. Thank you all for being here.
Questions? More than a question is a comment. I am a certified court interpreter. I worked for 35 years in the Supreme Court in Manhattan. So I had various cases like that through the years, many. But the one that really was the most important one for me was this alleged rapists of the Central Park woman who were found not guilty, who were found guilty and went to jail, and then were exonerated because they discovered that they were innocent. And a week after they were released from jail, they invited me to a documentary, and I didn't even know what I was going to attend. And it was the director of the documentary about them, and they were waiting there, came to me, and recognized me from the trial. So that is something that I never forget, every single day of my life. So I think it's important to make a comment like that.
Oscar, do you want to talk about Central Park 5?
Sure, I think it also plays into what happened in the Holtzclaw case, because if you lived in New York during that time, the way the media treated that case, even as a defense attorney, at that time I only practiced criminal defense, I said, you know, those boys are guilty. Okay, it was just the DA's portrayal of the evidence that they had against them and the way it was portrayed in the media. I still remember walking into the courthouse and seeing one of the defendant's mothers, Yusuf Salam, in front, and every day carrying a sign saying, "My son is innocent." I felt like saying to her, "I feel so badly for you, you know, that it happened to you and your family, but, you know, go inside and watch the trial. Don't try to, you know, you're not going to change people's minds out here." And that's what she was trying to do, you know, correctly in retrospect. But the DA's office in Manhattan continues to support that conviction even after the exoneration. So it's an excellent example that you bring up of what prejudging a case can do to the jury of a particular trial. And it's very hard to not have that in a sensational case like the Central Park 5, but it can even be more damning in a smaller, closer-knit community in a small town where there may be only one main paper, you know, one local news reporter, and that could slant the entire jury pool within a county. And so I think we have to be very, very careful, and it again goes back to jury service, about avoiding having that kind of sensationalism attached to a case that can so sway the community that's going to end up judging the case.
We want to get in as many questions as possible.
You're doing what I advocate for other people to do who know someone who's wrongfully convicted, and you're doing it as well or better than anyone, because I know I even thought he was guilty. And I tried to dodge you when you first approached me, and I was like, this crazy bitch, and you totally brought me around, so here I am, and I have a lot of respect for what you're doing, and we're going to get your brother out. And Jeff, of all the 25 years of doing this and all the hundreds of exonerees I've known, I couldn't be prouder of any of them. What you have overcome and accomplished is absolutely fucking breathtaking. And you are a reason that me and the rest of us will keep doing this until we take our last breath. So another round of applause for Jeff. And then I got my guy Anthony DePippo over here, who just is larger than life in every way. So I hope everyone gets a chance to meet him because he's got an unbelievable story. He's been on my podcast, he's been at my home, and we have a lot of good times ahead of us. So anyway, thank you again for doing this and for having me here. And you too, good job.
Thanks, man.
Even though your politics are fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah, just really quickly, I would be remiss, I think this is a perfect segue just to, while we celebrate, the people who are here, let's remember those who are not with us, and so one person in particular that I want to just call attention to is, Andrew Krivak, who's a foundation, client, the same person who, the polygraphist who, I said coerced the false confession out of me and, framed Anthony, did he coerce a false confession out of Anthony's co-defendant? So here's, imagine this, imagine one person who is out, right? He has a co-defendant, they're both arrested for committing the crime together. One man is out and recognized as being innocent in the National Registry of Exonerations, and the other man is still inside, even as we speak. So I just wanted to call attention to, to his case. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. We're getting the we're getting the this sign, so I definitely want to let you get a last word in, Anthony.
Listen, I love all you people up there, and I couldn't be prouder of you people. Jenny, I just want you to know that the innocence community hears you. We follow you. I'm learning as I go, but I believe Danny is innocent, and whatever I can do to help you, I will do from here on out. And God bless all you, and thank you for all your service and everything you said.
Thank you, everyone. There have been allusions made to the politics of people in this room, and what makes it very special is that common ground can be forged across left, right, and center. I said that this is the most important work that I've done, and this has been one of the most edifying days of my journalism career. I talked a lot about the metaphor for when you see the truth. And it's like when you're at the eye doctor, and there's this machine, it's called a phoropter, they put it in front of you, and a lot of times it's really blurry and you don't know what the hell you're seeing, and the eye doctor asks you if what you see is better or worse, and you're afraid because you're not really sure if it's better or worse, and then finally both of the eyes align, and you can see clearly. And I think about that answer, about whether it's better or worse, because in a lot of ways it's worse to know the truth. It's worse to know that every single day that there are families like Jenny's, and they're black and white and yellow and brown. They can be poor, they can be rich. And it does take a village, because one person can't do it alone. And I wake up every day and I get new emails every time I talk about Daniel's case, about all the other cases that are out there of people who need help. And it has changed my mind on many things, including the death penalty. And I may be a crazy right-wing, fire-breathing dragon bitch. But I am now a bitch on the side of trying to wake people up to the fact
that there are people who are living who've gone through this hell who can talk about it, but there are people who are dead who cannot. And it's happening in blue states, it's happening in red states, it's happening at the hands of prosecutors who may have a D or an R by the name, and they would not be enabled if not for the fact of people who are sitting on the sidelines who are actively engaging in evil. And they are people in my profession of journalism who are wasting the privilege that they have to exercise the First Amendment as a living. And I despise it, and I have contempt for it. And yes, there's all of this divisiveness about what goes on in Washington, D.C., but these kinds of wrongs and evils are happening in our backyards, and we can do something about it, and thank God we can. God bless you, and thank you for coming.
So this one we can get on the streets? This t-shirt?
This one, yeah, you can.